Welcome back to Unfiltered, Unspoken. You know we like to see the smile on our guest's face after the intro comes on.
That was an awesome intro.
Thank you. We want to welcome Danielle Young to Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast, and we told you we are not going to stop sharing life experiences. And by the beacon of God, we have been so blessed on this platform to continue to share life experiences. We have another amazing testimony that we're going to get into, and you know how City said, and I go. We want to welcome Danielle up. Danielle, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. And then after that, as you know, City Sid is going to kick off that first question.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Danielle Young. I am a master certified life coach, trauma-informed yoga teacher. I do yoga nidras. I just recently became a nervous system trainer through NeuroFit. And I started my company, Inspired Action Wellness, last year. I rebranded, and I make it my mission to help women who are ready to break free from self-doubt and emotional barriers, build unshakable self-confidence, and embrace their truth so they can create the fulfilling relationships and empowered lives they deserve. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you again for being here with us this evening. We do like to begin with, as we do with all of our guests, at the beginning of everyone's story. Did you experience any traumas or hardships, trials, and tribulations in your adolescent years? What was your home life like growing up? And what was that home structure like? And how did that kind of, mold you to kind of move through life?
Yeah, so I am an only child. I'm an only child from a single mom. I grew up in what was called the projects. It was the housing authority, government housing. We had no money. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Things were pretty rough. My dad was in and out of my life until I was 6, and then he left completely. What kicked this whole thing off was one night he had promised me that he was going to bring over a pizza. And, I was 6 years old, and I thought this was the greatest thing ever. My dad's going to come, he's going to bring a pizza, and he never showed up. And I sat on the back of the couch looking out the window, waiting for him to show up. And he never did. And my mom, I could tell she was disappointed, mostly for me, because she knew that I was really looking forward to this. She knew what it was going to do to me. And after that, I became a terror. I started fighting in school. I was trying to get teachers fired. I mean, I became hateful. I hated him. I didn't know why, because I didn't have a frame of reference. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that he had made this promise. He never showed up. And that led me down a path of having this void, this attachment wound for a male figure in my life. Thankfully, I had my grandpa, who was like my dad. I was very, very close with my grandfather. And I had an uncle that I was very, very close to as well. So I did have positive male figures in my life, but it was just that one that I was missing. So when I grew up, when I became a teenager, that's when I met, we'll call him Stupid, my abuser. And it downhilled from there.
Okay. All right. Let's see where. Okay. So watching your mom being only child, watching being an only child, and you turning in with behavior issues, what kind of stress did that put on your mom?
It put a lot on her. I remember her sitting me down, and she's like, "What is wrong with you? Like, what is going on? You're acting out in school. You're you're doing all these things. You have so much, so much hatred. So, what is going on with you? And I just started crying. And I said, I hate my dad. And I remember the look on her face, and I could tell that she was heartbroken for both of us. He not only let her down, he let me down, and she was picking up the pieces with me. And she explained to me, she's like, Danielle, that doesn't mean that you can act like this. He hurt you. Yes, it was bad, but you can't be like this. Like, you can't hold this in. And I eventually straightened up and got better. But I remember, having these conversations over and over with her, like, why did he leave? Like, and I found out that night he went to a bar. And so it was that whole thing of, he didn't love me. He didn't love me enough to keep a promise. And I kept replaying that over and over. And my mom kept having to explain to me, he's just a jerk for doing that to you. He's an ass for doing that to you. He let us both down. And you can't keep harboring this. You can't keep carrying this forward. You can't help who he is. And that was the message that she just kept relaying to me over and over and over again, is you cannot help how other people are.
And what do you feel was kind of the most, destructive consequence of that period in your life? Like, was there any kind of lifelong scars you wear, based on some actions or anything that you did, during that time frame?
Oh yeah, I carry that. I still carry it with me to this day. It has a different meaning to me now. It doesn't affect me as much now as it did, but when I was growing up, I was very awkward. I was always the tallest. In fact, I think I was the tallest in the school until high school. And then the boys passed me up. And I never had a boyfriend. I didn't date. So I was always looking. I had horrible self-esteem because of that. I was bullied a lot. And I was always looking for someone to fill that void that I didn't have. I wanted someone, a male figure who wasn't my grandpa or my uncle, to just love me. I wanted to feel validated. I wanted that external validation from someone. And I found it in an abuser. And there were red flags from the start. I ignored them because I was so desperate for that validation that it didn't matter that he was hurting me.
I want to go back just a little bit. You said in school you became a terror from your dad. The scar, the inside caused you to misbehave. So you said you fought a lot, but you also said that you were bullied. Can you talk a little bit more about that, the bully piece and being angry and fighting in school?
Yeah, the fighting started in kindergarten, just because I didn't know what to do with my emotions. I didn't know what I was feeling. I was just feeling like, my dad's gone. He made this promise. I don't know what to do with this. That lasted for not very long. Once my mom and I talked, the fighting kind of subsided, but the bullying, I was always bullied for being tall. I was bullied for being smart. I think I grew up in an area that it wasn't an affluent area. There was a lot of diversity. And I grew up in the projects, so I didn't have the best clothes. I wore Goodwill stuff. I wore hand-me-downs, and I think that other kids in my area also grew up how I did. So we were all fighting our own internal battles and just taking it out on each other. And then once I got into high school, I was still being bullied by the pretty girls. And, it wasn't so much bullying. It was more of I was being excluded. I would have a group of friends and they, I would plan things for them and they would never plan anything for me. So it was always this feeling of just being an outcast, like being an outsider. And my self-esteem really took a hit because of that.
Now, around that time, was there anything that outside of the relationship you got in, were there anything, or was there anything that was your vice or was your escape at that time, or anything that was positive that was kind of keeping you afloat and trying to help you to the other side emotionally?
Yeah, it wasn't really until I would say middle school that I really started coming into my own. Middle school, I did, I forget what it was called, like Quiz Bowl and things like that, where I could really put a spotlight on my intelligence and people appreciated it. I did play some sports. Once I got into high school, though, I did drama. I really I helped my uncle in community theater. And I was put on some antidepressants when I was 15 because I was so depressed. I had a lot of anxiety and depression. That helped a little bit, but I still had a lot of emotional stuff going on, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I'm going to jump back again a little bit. From being bullied, because we try to bring transparency to this, what kind of mental effects did being bullied cause? And can you give us an example of some of the effects of being bullied by others?
Yeah, so specifically, when I was, let's see, let me think of a specific example. There was a girl, and I was in elementary school. She always wanted to fight with me. And it made me feel like I didn't belong. Like I was, like I said, I was taller than everyone. I was awkward. So that was always being made fun of. They would call me names like Jolly Green Giant, and sometimes worse. And they would just make fun of my appearance. And that made me so self-conscious about what I looked like. I never thought I was pretty. I never thought that I would fit in with anyone else. I was always a bigger kid. So, the girls in my grade were a lot smaller than I was, and they had the cute clothes. And here I was in these, odd clothes. I mean, I had to buy men's jeans because women's jeans were not long enough for me. So in 6th grade, I'm wearing men's clothes, and it just made me feel like I'm just awkward. I don't belong here. I didn't feel good in my body. I felt really disconnected. I felt isolated and ostracized from everyone else. And I felt like the biggest thing was I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. My self-esteem was garbage.
Now, and I apologize if you did state, how old were you when you found yourself in this abusive relationship? And just so our viewers watching and possibly going through this can identify the initial kind of approach with some abusers, what was necessarily his tactic into kind of like luring you in or getting you interested? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. I was 18 when I met him. We worked together, and he was actually dating someone at our job. And she had left on vacation or something. They like broken. I don't remember the whole situation there, but he just started talking to me one day, and he was nice. He was funny. The part that lured me in was he paid attention. He paid attention to me. He talked to me. He would come up to where I was working and start a conversation. I would come in on my off days because we worked at a grocery store. I would come in and like pick up a few things, and he would see me and talk to me. And, I felt seen. I felt like, wow, this guy is talking to me. He's paying attention to me. And that's what started this whole thing.
Wow. So was there a big age gap before I ask my next question? What was the age gap?
I was 18, he was 28. So there was 10 years. And that was another thing that kind of lured me into, I liked older guys because the teenage boys, and too immature. Because I was very mature for my age. Mm-hmm. I wanted someone who was way more mature than what I was used to.
Understood. So do you feel like he preyed on you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So how long did it take for y'all to start dating after you met? Because he's giving you this feel good, I guess, making you feel a little more confident, light. Like, how long did it take?
I didn't take that long. I think our first like actual date was probably, I don't know, I would say maybe a month, 4 weeks, 6 weeks after we started talking. It wasn't that long. Yeah, it was, I would say at most 6 weeks.
Now, because there's a type of trauma, normally you can remember that a significant moment of, when you kind of felt the tides turn. What was, if you can remember that significant event, kind of where you knew things will probably, never be as you knew it in that relationship?
It started off with subtle things. There wasn't a really big moment until I would say, and I don't remember the first moment that happened. I remember the little moments, and I remember some big moments, but it started off with jealousy. He was very jealous when I would talk to other people. It didn't matter male or female. He would get very jealous. It was worse when I talked to males because I worked with other kids from my school. And, so we all knew each other. I grew up in a really small town. So I would talk to other classmates, and he did not like that at all. And then it kind of escalated from there into domination. Just, where were you? You didn't answer your phone. Like, why weren't you home? Things like that. And it just gradually escalated from there. I would say we were in the relationship for probably 4 to 5 months before I really started noticing that this didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel good.
Now, did your mother or the male figures in your life see any flags with your ex? Did they ever comment? Did they ever tell you leave, walk away?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I heard it from everybody. Like my mom was very open. She's like, Danielle, as long as you're happy, as long as this is what you want, then okay. But I'm starting to notice a change in you, and I just want you to know that I'm noticing this change in you, and it's kind of not okay. My grandpa, on the other hand, was like, you need to leave him. He's too old for you. Like this is not okay. And then my best friend at the time, she was like, yeah, this doesn't really seem like a good idea. He's way older than you. I mean, there were just so many red flags, and everyone else saw them and said, yeah, this is not good. This is not a good relationship for you. You need to get out, find somebody your own age, date, go. I mean, because I just graduated from high school, and I ignored them all. I mean, everybody had an opinion, and I just ignored it because I thought, I'm an adult now. I'm 18. I'm out of high school. I want to be free to do whatever I want. And I took that for everything that it was worth.
And at what point did you know, or did you, internally agree that this was not something that was healthy for you, or that you needed to get out? Was it, just kind of, a random moment over a series of time and events, or was there something in particular, that kind of put things in perspective for you?
I think it was when he got violent the first time. I'm trying to think if there was a time before that. Like I said, it was like the jealousy and the domination it wasn't comfortable, but I was making myself be okay with it. And the first time I left him was when he got mad at me about, I don't even remember what it was about. And he threw, at the time it was a VCR. That's how long ago this was. And he threw a VCR at me, and it hit my foot, and it cut my foot open, and it left a big gash. And I started crying, and he went off. He said, shut up, like, quit crying, quit being a baby. You just want me to feel sorry for you, just that. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't okay. I'm out. And that was the first time, I think that was the first time that I broke up with him. And it was the first of, like, I think 7 times that I tried to break up and leave him. But I think that was the first moment that I figured this is not an okay situation to be in. Jealousy and domination aside, he's now hurting me physically.
I want to ask, before I ask my next question, how long were you and him together?
We were together a little over 2 years.
Okay. So 2 years, okay. So through the 2 years, I believe you mentioned you had a child with him.
Yep.
How did that change the situation of y'all being together? Did the abuse escalate? Did things get worse?
Yeah.
We're trying to be transparent because a lot of folks believe because they have kids or situations that they should stay. So
yeah, no, that's the worst reason to stay. Absolute worst reason to stay in a relationship, an abusive relationship. Yeah. When I found out that I was pregnant, I think it really scared him. I think he did not want me to take birth control. I did sneak it because I did not want to have kids at that point. And I was in a situation, I full transparency here. I was in a situation where I can only be on medication for like 3 months, and then it loses efficiency. So that's how I ended up getting pregnant. And when I found out, I wasn't upset, but I wasn't thrilled either. I did not think that this was the person that I wanted to have kids with. And this was a year and a half into our relationship was when I got pregnant. My daughter was 3 weeks old when I finally left. He could not hold down a job. He was heavy into drugs, alcohol. He was an alcoholic to begin with, but I feel like the drugs especially escalated. I was working 3 jobs to try to keep a roof over my head and food on the table. And my doctor finally said, no, you're done. Like, you will have a heart attack and you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your baby. And when I told him, like, hey, you're going to have to man up and get a job, hold down a job. He called me a liar and said that my doctor never said that. And that I was just wanting to be lazy. And, there were so many things at that time where I knew he was not going to be her dad. I knew this was not going to last. I was making a plan to get out. I didn't know how I was going to leave. I didn't know when I was going to leave. I just knew that I was eventually going to get out. And he gave me that out when she was 3 weeks old. He tried to kill me. And that was when I finally said, I'm done. Peace out. We're not doing this.
Oh, is it my turn? Okay. Right now, how was the pregnancy for you? Was he any bit of a physically abusive while you were pregnant, or were you okay after you delivered? Did you go through any postpartum depression? Was there any anything that the chaos of the relationship contributed to regarding your pregnancy?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was so stressed out my whole pregnancy. I was in survival mode. He was physically violent with me while I was pregnant. I don't know if you want me to go into that or talk about that at all.
This is Unfiltered, Unspoken. You can go into it. We want to bring transparency to the audience, and there are so many women and men going through this. So speak how you feel. Let it out.
Okay. Yeah. So there were a couple of specific times that I remember. One of the jobs that I had very early on in my pregnancy was it was a machine shop, and I worked, there were, I think, 5 or 6 employees. I was the only female, and he hated that. He absolutely hated that. Accused me of having an affair with my boss, was accusing me of going into work every day and sleeping with my boss. I mean, the visualizations that he came up with were absolutely ridiculous. So I was asleep one night, and apparently I was like moving in my sleep, or I was moving in a way that he thought I was having a sexual dream about my boss. And he punched me in the back and woke me up and berated me and made me sleep on the floor. I had no blanket, no pillow. It was a hardwood floor, cold hardwood floor. And I basically had to gather up some clothes and dirty clothes, whatever I could find. And that's what I slept on. And I was about 4 months pregnant at that point. And that was the first time he made me sleep on the floor. The second time he made me sleep on the floor was shortly after that. We got into a fight about probably something really minor and stupid. And I ended up getting so upset, it triggered a migraine. And I was throwing up in the bathroom and came back in the bedroom with this terrible migraine. And he did not like that. And that was the second time he made me sleep on the floor, because he said I would interrupt his sleep. So, yeah. He would just do things really most of the time he was verbally cruel. I think I don't remember him getting physical more than that, or I just don't remember. Like I said, I was in survival mode. I don't remember a lot about that time. It comes back in like pieces. But yeah, it was more emotional than physical, I would say, at that point.
And it does come back. That's the thing. It's like,
Oh yeah,
it's in spurts. Like, if people like, well, you didn't mention it. You don't, because it just comes back in pieces. I want to ask. Oh, he's so cruel, sleeping on the floor.
yeah.
Did he have a reputation in town? Like, did you hear stuff about him? Like, did people did people know him? Like, did you know his family? Did you know any family history? Because, you know, some people have reputations, and then after you date them, you hear about their bad reputation.
No, he did not have a reputation. In fact, all of his friends, because in a public facing, he was a super nice guy. He's funny, you know, he would joke. He was nice. He was polite. I did meet his family. And his family was really nice. They were all very congenial, very welcoming. I loved his mom. You know, after my daughter was born, I went and visited her. I flew out of state to visit her and stayed with her for a few days. You know, so I got along with his family. Everyone that knew him was like, yeah, he's a great guy, but not public facing. He was a monster.
You don't think they knew that? Somebody had to know.
If they did, I didn't hear anything. He had a lot of his friends were alcoholics and drug addicts.
That would explain it.
Yeah, so he fit in with them. I was the one that was against drinking and against drugs. So whenever we would go to one of his friends' house or something, I was the good girl. You know, I wouldn't drink. That wasn't me. Definitely not comfortable doing drugs. It was mostly weed. You know, there were a couple times when I saw someone doing a little bit harder stuff, but you know, it was just mostly weed and alcohol, weed and beer. That was their outlet of choice.
And did you ever learn of or catch wind of anything that he had went through, you know, in his life that may have like contributed to his behavior?
Mm-mm. Nope.
Not at all.
No. You know, he said that his dad was really strict, but he never elaborated. So I don't know if really strict meant abusive or really strict meant he didn't let him roam the streets and do whatever the hell he wanted all the time. You know, he didn't really ever talk about his parents. He, you know, and his dad had passed away before we got together. So I only met his mom and his stepdad, and then his brothers and his sister. That was it.
Now, how do you parent with an abuser? Did you end up fully separating yourself from him? Was he allowed to see his daughter?
Yeah, right after the night that he tried to kill me, I moved out the next day, and I called the cops that night. I ended up, okay, so I'll back up. The night that he tried to kill me, I grabbed my daughter, went to my mom's. We called the police. The police came, took a report, didn't really care, acted, you know, very nonchalant. You know, here I'm standing there with blood all over me. And, you know, the cop had the audacity to say to me, well, at least you made it out alive. Like, that was my consolation prize. And when I pressed him, like, are you gonna, like, I'm standing here with blood all over me. I don't know if it's mine or if it's his at this point. Like, I was still in so much shock. I'm like, are you gonna go at least talk to him? And all he said was, oh, I might do a drive-by. I'm like, well, what the hell good is that? Do you not see me? So, after that, it was like, okay, I need to deal with this on my own because I don't feel like anyone is going to protect me at all. So I ended up filing charges and we went to court. He got 26 weeks of anger management classes and a $25 fine. Like at that point, that's what my life was worth. And the court, we did have a court date set up for visitation, custody, all that good stuff. He did not show up. So the court granted me sole custody of my daughter, but stipulated that he could see her. He had visitation rights. And I had to let him know of my address, my phone number at all times. So if I moved, I had to tell him where I was. I couldn't get a restraining order because I was not in imminent danger. So I was basically like, okay, it's up to me to protect myself and my daughter. He would drive by my house at night, or my mom's house. He would drive by late at night. He would call me. He would harass me. He would stalk me. He would threaten to kill me. This went on for about 2 years after I left. And I mean, he would just make all kinds of crazy threats. And the one thing, this really stuck with me all these years. The one thing that he really cared about was if I changed my daughter's last name. And I didn't, because he threatened to kill me if I did. And I thought, well, he's already tried once. I wasn't going to take a chance that he wasn't going to do it again. So I ended up not changing her name. But that was really the only thing he cared about. And it bothered me for the longest time. I defied the court order. I said, I'm not going to tell this man where I live. He's tried to kill me once. I don't want him around my daughter. He would never call her by her first name. He would call and he would say, how's she doing? And I'm like, why can't you say her name? And he would never answer. So I really didn't let him have a relationship with her. I did not want her growing up with that. And he eventually moved away. Thankfully he moved away out of state, but then he was still calling me and harassing me from out of state. And it was finally when I said, you have no power over me anymore. You can say all you want right now. I don't care. I worked in a law firm at that point. I'm like, I work for attorneys. Like, I'll dismantle you. Go ahead and try. And that was the point where he stopped calling and harassing me. When I finally said, you're not going to get to her. You're not going to get to me. I will own you if you try anything else. When I started standing up for myself and standing up for my daughter, that's when he finally left us alone.
Now, what was, after you were able to put some distance between you and him, what was the next kind of pivotal moment for you in life? What was life like, trying to rebuild your life after that, and getting used to things and not the way that they currently are? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, after I left him, I lived with my mom for a while. I found a full-time job. I went back to college. I put myself through college. I eventually got my own apartment with my daughter. I was living an independent life. I was working full-time. I was going to school. She was doing really well. I felt really confident and independent. And I started dating again. Met another Mr. Wrong, spent a year with him, and then just said, I'm done dating. I don't want to have anything else to do with this anymore. I went to therapy, started, seeing a counselor, but but that really didn't work for me because it wasn't, there was no action in it. I was just talking about what had happened to me, and it was still, everything was still coming up. And then I eventually started working at the law firm, and that's where I met my now husband. And we moved to the other side of the country from my hometown, and I started a whole new life.
Love it. I want to jump back to something real quick because I want to ask, how did he try to take your life?
Stupid?
Yeah, stupid. How did stupid try to take your life?
Yeah, we got into, so he had been gone all day. Now, my daughter was 3 weeks old, so I was 3 weeks postpartum. He'd been gone all day, came home late that night. He was drunk, and I can't prove it. I couldn't prove it, but I knew he was on drugs, and I knew that it wasn't marijuana. And I was sitting on the couch. He was sitting in the chair kind of next to me. And I was questioning him, like, where were you? Like what is this? And I knew at this point that eventually I was going to leave. I was oblivious to how or when it was going to happen because I was fed up. And he wouldn't answer me. He refused to answer me. He was being very dismissive, very sketchy. And I finally stood up off the couch and I was like, that's it. And he stood up out of the chair and shoved me back down on the couch. And that's when it escalated. Steel-toed boots were thrown at my head, came within inches of hitting my child. He eventually grabbed a knife, came after me with a knife. Somehow I got the knife away from him. He threw me down in the bed, choked me. I remember waking up and I was on the floor, and I remember looking at the ceiling, and he wasn't in the room. And I thought, oh God, he's got my daughter. And he heard me. And then we got into another altercation. And he was, throwing more things and tried to choke me again. And then he left. He ripped the phone out of the wall on his way out and left. And then I grabbed my daughter and left. I don't remember a lot of details. It wasn't until the next day when I went back to get all my stuff that I saw the blood on the walls. And I didn't know if it was mine or his. I don't remember leaving. I don't remember grabbing my daughter. I just know that I grabbed her and left. I mean, because she ended up with me at my mom's. Some of the things are still a little, they're still a little fuzzy. I don't remember a lot.
You just brought back, I'm sorry. I went through something similar. So this is not about me, but you just brought back something inside of me.
Yeah.
Thank God that you're here right now.
Yeah. It stays. I have worked so hard to form a different relationship with it. I went through years and years and years of repressed memories just coming back, and they would catch me at times that I would be driving and I would have to pull over because I'm like, oh my God, I would have my daughter in the car with me, and, she was still little, and these things just kept coming back. And eventually it was my son that was in the car with me, 10, 11 years later. And they're still coming up. And, it's like, what do you do with this? when they come up, it's like they just catch you so off guard that, it's like, is this real? Did this really happen? Or am I just imagining this? So for a while, I really did question these repressed memories that come up, because I couldn't believe that they had actually happened to me. And it was only when a lot of them started to come up, I could piece them together. And it was like, oh my God, this really did happen to me. Like, and then that's, you're reliving the trauma all over again after that. It's just, they come up and you just keep reliving it over and over and over and over and over again. Finally, I got the tools to be able to deal with it when they would come up. And it didn't affect me so much that I was still able to put the pieces together and just say, okay, this happened and I'm safe now. It's okay. And that's ultimately how they still come up. We're 25 years later and they still will surface at really random and odd times.
Absolutely. I forgot the question I initially wanted to ask, but
that's okay.
I'm sorry. Were there any initial, I guess, kind of issues with when you met your current husband and regarding your past and the things that you had been through? Was it a little hard adjusting, to someone, that I assume is much better than your ex? And what kind of issues, did you all have at the beginning, or maybe that you still suffer with?
Wonderful question, Sid. Wonderful question.
Yeah. So not only was I coming out of a bad relationship and did not want to have anything to do with men, he was also coming out of a bad relationship and wanted to have nothing to do with women. So the office manager at the law firm where I worked, I actually hired my husband. He was, we were having some tech problems, and he was our computer guy that I ended up hiring. So she got us together, and, we were both like, okay, we're just going to be friends. Like, we're just going to like dip our toe in this lake and see how this goes. Like, I was very much like, no, you stay over there. I'm going to stay over here, and we'll see what happens. I mean, we were very, very cautious with each other. I had major trust issues. So did he. I was still reliving all of the trauma that I had gone through. I was still, when I met my husband, I was still being harassed by Stupid. So when I would spin out and, like Stupid would call me and, threaten me, I would call my husband and I'm like, I just need to hear a friendly voice. And I think by me doing that, it helped him understand what I was going through. And then when he opened up about his past relationship, it really opened my eyes to like, okay, I can understand where he's coming from. And it took 6 weeks for us to even kiss. Like, we were that far from each other. I'm like, you can come over, you can hang out, we can go to dinner, but there ain't nothing beyond that happening. Like, I did not trust men at all. Because I had tried to date before him and I was just consistently rejected, like, over and over and over again. So I was really just burned out by that point. And we just had these really tough conversations because I really did like him. He's absolutely one of the sweetest men you will ever meet. He is so good to me and he's so good to my daughter. And I mean, he really did take her on as his own. And, we've really had our trials and tribulations. We've been through so much. We've been together for, it'll be 21 years this year. And we've been married for 14 next month. So I've seen him at his worst. He's seen me at my worst. And it just took a lot of communication in the beginning. And I would do this thing where I would just shut down all the time. Like, we would get into an argument and I would just shut down. And he would just shut down. And finally I'm like, okay, we can't keep doing this. Like, okay, and he would constantly say to me, I'm not him. I'm like, yeah, and I'm not her either. So I think we just had to come to like this meeting of the minds where we're like, okay, we're not each other's exes. We need to figure out a way forward if we're going to make this work. And it took a lot. And, like every relationship, there's always ups and downs, but we've navigated them together. I think we've done a really great job. We have a son together. We've just been on this journey. Yeah. And it's all boiled down to like communication.
I love it. I want to ask real quick. You said you had a rare, condition where after 3 months taking medication, it's not effective anymore.
Yep.
Do you know a little bit about your rare condition, what it's called?
Nope.
No doctors could diagnose it or anything?
What they could come up with was my liver processes things so quickly that it's like there's a 3-month span that the medication will be able to process and still stay at its like full strength in my system. And then after that, it starts to like taper off. So I would have to be on medication. Yeah. Cause I took antidepressants too, and they would start to lose effectiveness after 3 months. So I would have to switch to a different dose or a different drug altogether. Yeah. And even to this day, I have to take things for like 3 months and then I have to get off for a little while and then I can start back up again.
Interesting. And they don't the doctors, I guess they don't see that a lot of that. So
it's just the way that my body metabolizes things.
You might can make some money. You might can make some money for them like trying to see.
I've always been a medical anomaly. So it really doesn't surprise me that this is just one more thing to add to my my list of weird quirks about my body.
Now, how
you want to go ahead and close off the last question?
Okay. So how did you, or how did this inspire going into the kind of career field you're in now, and what you're doing to help other people?
I basically became who I needed when I was starting off on my healing journey. I did not have a lot of support. I didn't have a lot of places to go or a lot of things to do. Like I said, I grew up in a really small town, so there wasn't a lot of options. And way back then, it was like you go to therapy and that's about it. So as I was going through my healing journey and I moved away from my hometown, I started discovering there is life outside of therapy and counseling. So I started trying all of these different things. Yoga was huge in my healing. So I became a yoga teacher. When I was introduced to Yoga Nidra, which is a meditative type of yoga, it's like yogic sleep. I released a major the visualization that we were doing, I released a major piece of trauma from my time with Stupid, and I was hooked after that. And I just started going through trying all of these different things, and eventually got this toolbox. I built this arsenal of tools that worked. And I thought, I need to share this because I don't want someone who is going through what I went through to take 20 years to heal like I did. I want to be able to give this to everybody and help them sooner. These are huge. My biggest thing is helping people get out of a victim mentality. What that does to your body. I have 2 autoimmune disorders because of it. You know, I don't want that to happen to other people. So I started this company to do just that. You know, I don't want people to feel stuck. If you feel stuck, or if you feel like all of these, like, I'm worthless, I feel like a burden, like, don't feel like that. You know, I really wanted to help people out of that mentality, because trauma does so much to you that you can't see the forest for the trees. You know, there was a huge period of time where I did not think I could heal, where I was getting so mad at myself because I'm like, why can't I just get rid of this? And I realized it was because I was doing the wrong things. Trauma lives in the body. And I was doing head stuff. And yes, that is a big part of it. But another huge part of it is figuring out how it all works together and then doing the things to release it. And I thought, I have this knowledge. I cannot gatekeep this knowledge. I have to share it. And that's what I'm doing.
Love it. And I agree with you 100%. And that's why we have platforms like Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast. We're at almost at time. I want to ask real quick. Did your dad ever show up? Did you ever see him again? Ever?
12 years later, he showed up. His childhood home was actually 3 doors down from my grandparents.
Uh-huh.
So that's where he went. Yeah. And then his sister.
3 doors down?
3 doors down. His sister, my aunt, came. It was Halloween. We'll never forget this. Halloween brought her baby to my grandparents' house to trick or treat. And she's like, oh yeah, your dad's just down at the house. You should go down and say hi. And I was 17 at the time. And I had 2 half sisters that I had never met. And so I went down and we talked outside, and, you know, I met one of my half sisters at the time, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I did form a little bit of a relationship with him, but then he turned out to be a monster too. And I said, peace out. I don't need this in my life. I don't want you in my life. Now I know why my mom dumped your ass. Like, I don't, like, had you stayed, I would be more messed up than I am today. You know, like, I mean, it was just, it really did help me realize I didn't need him.
Good.
He was better off gone.
Good. Well, we are at time, and typically we have 2 last things. What advice would you give the audience to help them start the journey to healing the things that you have went through, from being left out with dad, or helping someone, a man or female, through a domestic situation for them to get out?
So the first part of that, if you are already out and you're going through this, my biggest recommendation is don't stay stuck. Do not drop anchor in the trauma and the victim mindset. It is super important that you get the help that you need to move through it. It's not going to be easy, but it doesn't have to be hard. There will be days that you're going to feel like giving up. There's going to be days that you feel like, I can't do this. Just keep going. Start small. Work from there, build your confidence. And I mean, obviously, if you would like some support with that, I do see private clients. So, the other part of that, with people who are in it, who want to get out, but don't know how, make a plan. If you have not told anyone what's going on with you right now, or they don't know about the abuse, you need to tell somebody. Tell a trusted friend, tell a trusted family member, tell anybody. But start making a plan to get out. There are hotlines. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They will help you. They will help you make a plan. There's more than likely going to be local resources that you can contact that will also help you. Make those phone calls if you can, and keep yourself safe.
Absolutely. And that is a good segue into our final part of the show. As we always do, we like to give our guests the chance to do shameless plugs. So please give our viewers here a synopsis of how they can reach you, utilize their services. If there's anything that you want to bring awareness or traffic to, if you have anything for sale, anything you want to bring to the floor, you have it.
Yeah, so the easiest way to get in touch with me is on my website. It's inspiredactionwellness.com. There's a whole wealth of information on there. I have an option to get a free guide. It is tips on how to rebuild after trauma, totally free. Obviously, if someone does need extra support with this or would like to just chat about how to get started, or would like to talk to me a little bit more, there's an option on there to book a free call with me. I would be more than happy to talk to you, figure out where you're at, tell me where you are, where you want to be, and how I can best support you to get there. I am doing a couple of summits here coming up in March. I will be speaking at a couple of women's summits. Those will be on my website shortly. I'm also doing a big summit in London, June 1st. So I will have all of that info on my website. I also do a lot of podcasts. There's the podcast episodes if you want to learn a little bit more about me. And that's about it, really.
Okay, and there you have it. Danielle, we want to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast and bringing transparency to your life experience. You caught me because a lot of the things that you went through, I could feel it because I went through those things. So the one thing that I want to say is no matter how much that you heal, scars will follow you sometimes for the rest of your life. And those are things that we cannot change. But, a lot of us that are on healing journeys, we have to be very transparent about things that could trigger us or how, we navigate through life, because almost losing your life from abuser is just not something that you can never forget. That's something that will always follow you.
Yeah.
So thank you. We really appreciate your transparency. And for those that connected, please, we hope that Danielle's life experience will help you navigate through what you are going through. And remember, exit plans are very important, and we hope that you don't stay in the situation, that you will get up and leave. Yeah. See it. We're going to keep sharing these life experiences, right?
That's right.
That's right. So please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube, Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast. That is free to support us. And also, once we get to where we're going, if you can see scrolling, please support our nonprofit organization, www.thegoodfight.com. That's TheGoodFight. I said .com. I meant .org. I apologize. .org. Check out some of the wonderful things that we're doing in the communities to give back to youth, to save them from going through traumas that we went through. Peace.
I'm still recording this.